I just locked my keys in my car. Welcome to my life. It'd be really nice if I could find the things that help me see, but I don't know where they are. 10 minutes of searching and still no luck with the glasses. There we go. We're good. Okay, perfect. So welcome to the video. We're not going anywhere. I just had to come outside to get my glasses. And I just locked my keys in my car. Welcome to my life. Just to show you, I'm not kidding. There they are. So if I've learned anything in the time I've owned this car, it is always have a spare key, so that was close. It is. Also, please note, my car is full of stuff for my classroom. Okay, now that we can see, we can make coffee. Hi teacher friends, and welcome back to my channel. I just want to say thank you first and foremost to those of you who have commented and liked and subscribed so far. It really means so much to, someone like me who wasn't really sure if they should start a channel or not, but I really am glad that I was able to help even a few of you out. I am going to be talking about fonts today in this video. I'm not sure why I said that because you clearly have eyes, but fonts are something I get asked about all the time on Instagram and in person, and I am more than happy to share everything I have learned about the font world, and let me tell you, it's a big world. Tesla, stop eating my shoe! I am going to start at the very basics, so how to download a font, how to use it, how to get it on your computer. I took a poll on Instagram to see how many of you had PCs versus Macs, and it's pretty much the same, guys. I use a MacBook, so everything that you're going to see me do is on a MacBook, but you can just as easily do it on a PC. The way that you download your fonts is going to be a little bit different, but I can kind of talk you through that just a little bit. You might have to go Google really quickly or YouTube how to download fonts on a PC. But other than that, I'm gonna help you out today. So the first part is gonna be talking about downloading fonts, where to get fonts, how you can organize them because we're teachers and we love organization. And the second part is gonna be about using fonts and pairing fonts and styling your text and making things look nice, which I think a lot of people who maybe haven't designed anything before can struggle with sometimes. So I'm going to give you all of my tips, all of my advice. So I want to start this video by talking about creative license, right? It's a big one. So you have the opportunity to make anything you want, to take any kind of ideas that are out there and make them your own, okay? What you 100% cannot do is steal other people's ideas and claim them for your own. You can't. You just can't. There are real world consequences, right? So if you've noticed before, maybe you've asked someone, what font did you use? What program did you use? How did you make that? I bet you they probably didn't tell you. And if they did tell you, they were not very specific. And that's for a really good reason. People who create things have spent a lot of time figuring it out, playing with it, designing it, and I mean hours probably, because it takes a really long time to create things. And some people don't realize that, but it does. And if they were to give you all the resources and the tools that they use to make their product, for example, if I were to give you a complete walkthrough on how I made maybe my classroom coupons that I have in my Class Dojo store, maybe you wouldn't pay for them. Maybe you would try to rip me off and make your own, right? So that's a real fear that creators face, and that's the reason it is so hard to find tutorials like this that walk you through things, because people don't want you to steal their ideas. Plain and simple. Nobody wants their work to get ripped off. So just know you can make things for yourself and you can make things to sell, but you cannot use anybody else's work and claim it as your own. I want to make this video to give you as many tools as possible to make your own things and make them look good, okay? Because I know that when I was starting out, it was really, really hard to figure out all of the steps I needed to take. How come some people's work looks so good and mine just looked amateur? So I'm gonna help you make beautiful designs and create things that look really, really nice, and just know that if you rip off someone's work, it's not gonna be good. So whenever you are starting out, I really recommend getting free fonts, but just keep in mind that just because the font is free does not mean you can sell something with that font, okay? There's something called a personal license and there's something called a commercial license. And if you download a free font that is for personal use only, what that means is you cannot create a product with that font and sell it for money, okay? So a lot of times if you go to download a font, actually, I think most of the time, they're gonna be very, very blatant with you that this font is for personal use only. If it says commercial use, that means you are good to sell it, okay? So I recommend not spending any money on fonts until you've kind of played with things and tried things out a little bit, and then when you wanna start selling the things that you make, finding fonts that have commercial licenses for free, which you can still do. Some of the places that I like to get fonts, and actually I'm gonna be honest with you guys, when I first started getting into designing and creating my own products, I went to Pinterest. That's how I got interested in fonts. If you search, for example, script fonts on Pinterest, you're gonna find a lot of pretty, almost handwritten looking fonts. And when you click on that picture, it's gonna take you to a website where you can download that font, where you will then see whether it's personal use or commercial use. So keep in mind, it's really, really important to know which fonts you can use in your products and which fonts you can only use for yourself. So I really like Pinterest for searching for fonts. A lot of times Pinterest will have lists for you that other people have created that have similar fonts with them, okay? Another place you can go to is Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a really great way to support other teachers. So there are a few kind of options out there that are really, really popular. I know Amy Grosbeck and Miss Fifth and Kimberly Gwesson, they all have font packages for you. Some fonts are gonna be free, but you have to pay for the commercial use, and some of them are going to be paid fonts. Again, I recommend starting off with the free fonts. Okay, so there are other websites that you can get fonts from, like fontsquirrel.com, dafont.com, 1001fonts.com. They have really silly names, but they have a ton of fonts, and it's gonna take some time for you to scroll through and find ones that you like. But if anything catches your eye, I would just download it and try it out, because you never know what it's gonna actually look like when you're using it. Another place that I just learned about is googlefonts.com. I think is what it's called, and what I heard is that they are all commercial licensed fonts, so you can use them in your products. I'm gonna double check and make sure for you guys. So whenever you're downloading fonts, there's a really simple process to go through if you are on a MacBook. So all I have to do on a MacBook is press download, and then it shows up in my downloads, and I will double click that, and it'll just let me install it. There's a simple install button right then and there, okay? So for PC users, I know it's a little bit different. After you extract your files from your font download, you are gonna have to take the actual font file and copy and paste it into your fonts folder. You can find your fonts folder if you're on a PC by just typing in your search bar, fonts. I know it's somewhere in your control panel, but because I don't have a PC, I can't give you an exact location. But all you have to do is just drag it over or copy and paste it into your fonts, okay? So for MacBook users, I know whenever you install a font, you can organize it into folders, which is what I've done. And it's really simple to do. All you have to do is create a new folder and then drag the font you want into it. So I keep all of my brush fonts, for example, I keep them all in one spot so that if I am looking for a brush font, I can just go to that folder and see all the fonts that I've downloaded that are brush fonts. So whenever you download fonts for the first time, if you already have a program like PowerPoint open, it's not going to just automatically appear. You have to close out your program and then reopen it, and then your font should be there. So I have 5 big tips for you guys whenever you are creating and using fonts. The first tip is to consider your audience, right? So we can immediately tell if a product is for an adult or a child. Your fonts convey a message, so choose accordingly. The second tip I have for you is to make sure whatever font you choose is readable. Don't pick a font that is really, really hard to read, because people are not going to like it. It is not going to be pleasing to the eye. The third tip is to use just a couple of fonts. If you can, use 1. Use 2, but don't really go over 3. When you go over 3 fonts, your work might tend to look amateur or messy. So I'm going to show you the different ways that you can manipulate a couple of fonts to still make your end product look diverse and dramatic and give that effect without looking messy. My next tip kind of goes along with only using a couple of fonts. You want to make sure that the fonts you choose complement but also contrast each other. So you don't want to use a script font and a script font, but maybe you do want to use a script font with a more modern font. And that contrast is really going to be pleasing to the eye. And that takes some practicing and playing around with to kind of figure out at first. My last tip is to just keep it simple. If you know the acronym KISS, that's what I'm talking about. The more things that you add to your design, the more busy it looks, the more amateur it looks. So kind of take a step back, tone things down. Consider whether or not you're using too many words. Consider whether or not you are making certain focal points in your work, and that's really going to make a big difference. Okay, so I'm going to break down for you guys the different kind of classic font styles that I'm going to be talking about. The first, over on the left over here, we have serif fonts. So a serif font is any font that has a little bit of an extra detail to it. So I'll zoom in better for you. So you can see this R has that kind of detail, and the F has that detail here. This Y kind of drops down and there's a little extra curve there. And then I put this font here just to dramatize what I'm talking about. So you can see that they curve. There's something extra added onto them. Whereas sans serif fonts, like these fonts over here, they are going to be your very simple, straightforward fonts, nothing else to them. They look very, very modern, right? So there's not any extra detailing on the letters. They are just very streamlined and simple. The next kind of fonts are really, really popular, and I personally love using them. They are script fonts, and these fonts are the ones that are going to look handwritten and kind of like a cursive format. And then we have a separate category for decorative fonts, and decorative fonts are the really, really fun ones that you might want to use, but you need to use them sparingly, because if you use too much of the same font that's a decorative font, it'll look messy, and if you use too much of multiple decorative fonts, it'll look messy, so use them sparingly. So I've created a few kind of text layouts for you guys to show you what not to do, and I'm going to show you how I might just try to fix it. So in this first example right here, you can see that I've used 3 different fonts, which is a big no-no. This really isn't the worst. There are definitely worse fonts that you could pair together. These were all created by the same author, so it's not going to be a terrible combination, but we can still make it look better. This one right here that says welcome to the show, I have used only 2 fonts, but I've done it in a way that still looks kind of busy, and it doesn't have kind of the message I want to personally convey. It's just too much. This one down here, I just went crazy because some people, you know, if they like 3 fonts, they think I need to use all 3 fonts. You don't. I've actually used 4 different fonts here, and you can tell it's just too much going on. So I'm going to show you how I might simplify and make all of these designs look a little bit better. So for this one up here, how to pair fonts for a beautiful look, I'm going to choose 2 fonts for it. So let's say, so one tip I have for you when you're creating something with multiple fonts and multiple lines of text is to put each line of text in a separate text box. So you can see here, these are in the same box and they're kind of overlapping in a way that I don't want. So I'm going to take this word fonts and I'm going to take it out of there and give it its own text box because it's easier to manipulate. So if I wanted to, I could drag how to pair fonts for a beautiful look down like that. It doesn't look better, so I'm going to mess around with my font choices. I'm going to move it over here just so you guys can see. So I want the word fonts to kind of stick out a little bit more. I want the word fonts to be my focal point. So I might give that this scripted font that I have right here, which is one of my KG fonts. Okay. How to pair fonts for a beautiful look. And actually I'm going to take this, use my format painter to copy the style of the text into the one down here, and we'll see if that makes it look any better. I didn't click it. Okay. Highlight it. Alright. So you can tell that that already looks a little bit better. The only thing I'm noticing when I'm looking at that design right here is that all of the letters have the same kind of thickness. So this is a very bold font, and the word fonts right here is also very bold. So to make it look a little bit nicer, one thing I could do is to make this text thinner by choosing a different font, or I can make this text thinner by choosing a different font. So I'm just gonna do this because it's easier to change one, and I'm gonna make it in a more delicate font. And that looks a little bit better. But the problem I'm running into now is that this font looks too playful and this font looks too streamlined. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about when I mention conflicting fonts. You want to pair a decorative font with a more modern font. So these fonts are both fonts that I would consider to be slightly decorative just because they're not too basic. So they're competing for attention. So this is something someone might put together and think, it looks okay, but we can make it better. So I'm gonna go and put a classic sans serif font in there. I'm gonna substitute it. So I can just go with something simple like Helvetica, and that's immediately going to make it look a little bit better. Okay, so it's less busy, and you can play around with the placement and, you know, capital letters, not capital letters. So maybe it might look better if what did I say, pair? If I use capital letters for a beautiful look. Take that away. Okay. There we go. And another thing you can do to kind of give it more, I guess, dimension is you can bold something. So for this one, I can make it italic, and that changes the look but still keeps it simple. I can bold it. I'm having a hard time selecting things. And I think that actually looks really good. Obviously the sizing you'd have to play with a little bit more to make it better, but this looks so much better than this, and that's because I stuck with two fonts and I made the most out of them. Now let's talk about balance. How can you create balance whenever you're designing text? As you can see, here I have, welcome to the show, let's have a great time. It doesn't work for a couple of reasons. For one, I have too much of this brushed font going on, way too much. My eye doesn't really know where to look. Second of all, there's no focal point. So I want welcome to the show to be my focal point, so I'm gonna move that over and start working with it, okay? And in order to create a balanced look, I can make sure that my text all aligns in a sort of box. So here's the beginning and here's the ending, and I want my text to align perfectly with it. So I like this font right here, Optima. It's one of my go-to fonts for creating really simple looks. So I'll say, let's have a great time. And actually, I'm still on caps lock. I'm gonna make it caps lock because it just adds a little something extra. I think it makes it look more of like a heading rather than a body whenever you use caps. So if you think your design looks a little bit off, try just typing in all caps and see if that makes it better. Okay, so obviously this font is way too big right now. So let's size it down, and I want it to be the same size as welcome to the show. And there are a couple different ways I can do that. I can play with the font size and see if I can get it perfect, which, you know, that actually kind of works. But I want to add something else to this. It doesn't look quite right yet. I'm going to bold this because I think that's something really important. If I'm saying welcome to the show, let's have a great time, I want that great time to stand out a little bit more. You can see in this design I tried to do that by giving it the same scripted font, but it was too busy. So just by bolding this font over here, I can still make it stand out. Okay, but I can actually make this look a little bit better, and one way I can do that is by adjusting the kerning of my font. So I told you we were gonna get a little techie. Here we go. So let's look at this word right here, or this phrase, let's have a, okay? The spaces between the letters have already been set by whoever created this font. I can adjust those spaces. If you go to the very top and click on format, then click on font, okay? If you're on a Mac, you can just press Command T, as in Tom, and it'll bring it up. You're gonna go under character spacing. Right now it's set to normal. If you expand it, it's going to increase the distance between your letters. If you condense it, it's gonna make it smaller. For the purposes of this, I'm going to expand it, and I'm just gonna expand it by 3 points. And you can see how much nicer it looks, right? So that's a little trick I like to use. I'm gonna make the font a little bit smaller. Okay, there we go. And honestly, I think that I need to expand this as well. So I'm gonna go back into my fonts, character spacing, and expand that one too, just so that everything lines up. Okay, let's have a great time. And I actually think that looks pretty good. So you can obviously adjust and play around a little bit more. If you wanted to add more text to this though, I would be really careful. So let's say I wanted to say, welcome to the show, let's have a great time, and then talk about it. So we will be doing awesome, I can type, I promise. Awesome things. There is so much going on. Like and subscribe because you are amazing. Okay, let's pretend this makes sense. So I am not going to make this text down here the same width because it's going to be competing. Whenever you're designing, you want to think about what looks best to the eye. And like I said, the simpler you keep things, the better they're going to look. So this font is not the same font as this one, so they're already competing. I'm going to change this font to be the same. I'm going to drop it down just a little bit. And I'm going to make it stand out by making it smaller, okay? But this doesn't look right either. So what I'm gonna do is break it up. My eye has too much to look at right now. A really simple tip that you can use is to add lines to whatever you're creating to kind of give the eye a break. So I'm gonna insert a shape and I'm gonna insert a line, just like we did in the last video. I'm trying to make that straight. It's probably not straight, but I'm gonna make it black. So you can see that already looks better, and I'm going to adjust the spacing a little bit. You can see that this looks a lot better than what I had over here, just because there is a focal point and there is a structure to it. Okay, so off camera I turned this mess over here into this for you, just so you don't have to sit and watch me do it, but I can kind of talk you through what I did quickly. So I gave it a focal point first and foremost, subscribe. My eye has somewhere to look. And then I bolded this font, even though it's the same as all of the other text here, to make it stand out just a tad bit. And over here I expanded the font by, I think, 4 points, and I put it in italics. Some people might think it's a little too much. I just wanted to give you another example of ways that you could frame text to make it look cohesive, but still give it the effect you want to go for and not create a mess like this. Okay, now I'm going to show you some different ways that you can style your text, and this is really the fun part, I think. So the first thing I'm going to teach you to do is outline your text. So outlining your text works really well with a sans serif font. It works really terribly with script fonts, so be really conscious of what font you choose to outline. So I'm picking this nice big and bold one that I have in all capital letters, and what I'm going to do is double click this box. We talked about this a lot in the last video, but I'm bringing up my formatting pane. So for my text, I'm actually going to fill it with a white, and then I'm going to outline it with a black. And outlining is as simple as that. In your formatting pane, you can change the thickness of your line. So sometimes it looks a little bit better if you make it a little bit thicker, like that. But you can definitely go overboard. That is clearly too much. So again, think about the space and what looks most pleasing to the eye. I really like the way that looks. The next thing I'm going to teach you about is making text glow. So I want to use the same format as my how to outline over here. So I'm just going to select the box as a whole and click on my formatting tool over here. So it'll copy whatever you've done to one text and paste it to the other. If you want to copy the formatting to multiple texts, just double click on the brush so you can keep using it. If you only click the brush one time, it's only going to work one time. So if I click it one time, there we go. If I click this, it obviously didn't change it. I'm going to do that again for you. So I want to copy this formatting. If I double click the brush, I can use it over and over again. So I'm going to double click. I'll do that one, and I'll do that one, and it'll change it. Okay, so a little tip there. All right. And I'm just going to click anywhere to quit using the brush. So to make it glow, it's really, really simple. Go back to your text options because we're modifying the text and not the shape around the text. And then you're going to go under this middle option, and that's going to give you your effects. So you can do glow by clicking on this right here. I'm just going to give it a black glow because it looks simple. So whenever you're designing, don't be too overwhelming with, you know, your color or whatever you choose to do. I'm just going to do black because it's nice and simple. Can change the size. And you can mess with the transparency if you want. I usually just keep it on full transparent. There we go. And that looks a little busy right there, but just for purposes, I'm gonna leave it. Rainbow text is something that's really fun to do, but it can be so time consuming. So if you have a lot of things that you wanna add rainbow text to, one thing you can do is just get your palette set right away. So the first thing I wanna do is change the color of the E. So I'll make that pink. And then I'll go to this green, then I'll go to this blue, and let's just say I want those three colors, okay? So what I can do is copy these three letters that have my colors, hit Command-C, Command-V, paste them in there, and I'm actually going to just modify that text. So instead of changing the color of every single letter, oh, I took it away, didn't I? I'm gonna modify letter by letter, and it saves you a little bit of time. So easy, I don't remember what I said, way to rainbow, copy that, easy way to rainbow, you get it, okay? So that looks okay, but something you can do to make it look a little better is add that outline on top, and that's gonna kind of give it some grounding. So I'm going to go back and add an outline just so you can see that it looks a little bit better. Okay. Oops, too much. So you can see that having that outline gives your eye a little bit of a break. The next thing I'm going to teach you how to do is layer, and layering is very, very easy to do, but it can give a really cool effect. So I like to pick, once again, a font that has kind of a lot of space. I don't want to pick a font that is too thin because it just won't look right. So I'm going to actually copy the formatting from this one into here. And then I'm going to duplicate my text. Whenever you're layering, you have to create two separate boxes. So I'm going to do another one like that. And this one I'm actually not going to have an outline on, but let's say I want it to be in the color, we'll go with my favorite pink. I'm going to take the outline off, no outline, and I'm going to send it to the back. Okay? And here you can see it's not showing up because I filled this text with a white earlier, so I'm gonna go ahead and take the fill out. So I can go up to this button right here, or I can go to my text options over on the right. So I'm actually gonna say color, oops, I'm gonna say no fill, and then it's transparent, right? So that looks a little crazy. I usually like to line it up and then move it a little bit over to the right and a little bit down. So a little bit to the right and a little bit down. And that looks really good. So that's a really fun way to make your text pop. And I'll zoom in so you can kind of see this a little bit better. Okay. And another tip I want to show you is filling text. So it's something you can do if you maybe found a pattern online that you really like. Let's say you want polka dot letters, you could do that. I'm just going to use whatever I have on this computer. So for filling text, I'm going to select the box, go over to my text options, and then I'm going to go into these fills. Okay, so if I want to fill it with a pattern, I have those options. I'm actually going to go with the picture fill, and then I have my wood that I've already used before, so it came up. But you can use whatever picture you want. You can just pull it up from your files. So if you're doing like a 4th of July project, you can fill it with stars or fill it with stripes. And again, this might look a little bit better if we add an outline to it, just to give it some kind of grounding, right? So those are a few different things you can do to kind of style your text. Another one that is really, really common is making it curved, okay? So for example, in my logo, I'll pull it up for you right here. Okay. In my logo right here, I have created curved text to kind of simulate a circle. So I'll show you how to do that. This is how you curve text. And it's super, super simple. Okay, so I'm going to double click. I know I just deleted that. And I'm going to go under, actually let's go under shape format up here, because I think this is the simplest way to show you. There's this little glowing A button right here. And you can also access that pane here. So if you click it and go under ABC Transform, you can see the different ways you can curve it. So I typically will go for this option. And you can see that the text is curved, but it's not a very tight curve. And that's because the text box is the width that it is. So you can see my text box starts here and ends here. If I tighten that box, it's gonna tighten my curve a little bit, okay? And the wider I make it, the less curve I have. So I can use this to adjust the direction of it. Let's say I want a tight curve. I'm going to move it in just a little bit, and this yellow kind of node right here is going to help you adjust how dramatic that curve is going to be. So if I move it like this, it's going to create more of a dramatic curve. And you can play with it and make it how you want, but just know that the outer box is what your curve is going to be based on. So I can make it more like an oval, more like a tight circle, and there's so many different things you can do with that too. So those are a few different ways that you can style your text. Thank you guys so much for watching. That's all I have for this video. I hope that something in here was useful to you, and just know that if there's anything I didn't mention that you are curious about or need help with or want to know, drop a comment down below and I can talk about that with you. You can also reach me on Instagram at MissCallsCampers or email me at calltheteacher@gmail.com. I'm happy to help you with whatever you need. So please like this video if it was helpful so that other teachers can see it, and subscribe so you can see my future videos. We're going to be talking about clip art, classroom logos, worksheets, all those fun things. So stay tuned and happy teaching.